December 12th, 2023, and this is the first time Mauga gets nerfed a week after being added into the Overwatch hero roster, and him still not being available in ranked. He'll be available next week. Blizzard just said that they're gonna do like a series of nerfs right now, and then see how his stats are going to progress up until next week when he's gonna be available in ranked. And the patch is live currently, and here are the changes. Mauga, incendiary and volatile chain guns. Chain gun damage reduced from 5 to 4. The number of shots with the incendiary chain gun to ignite enemies increased from 10 to 15. And cage fight his ultimate. Ultimate duration reduced from 10 to 8 seconds. Okay. Let me just hydrate really fast. Okay, one sip of water. And then we're gonna dive into like explaining the changes and why I think they did this. Okay, let me put another leg over here. So, this might be the first series of changes. Now, to summarize, he does less damage per bullet. You need to do more, you need to hit more shots in order to trigger your incendiary chain gun to do critical shots. 50% more damage, that is. More bullets, I mean. And the ultimate cost got the ultimate duration reduced from 10 to 8 seconds, 2 seconds less. Okay, now, probably a lot of you are gonna be like, Mr. Streamer, is this enough? And I'm gonna say for everybody, everywhere, no. I don't think that this is enough. Is this a good step into making him balanced? Yes. Now, recently, and I want to mention this, recently, we've seen Tracer being buffed with 0.5 damage. That propelled her as probably, I would say actually, the best DPS hero, the strongest DPS hero in the game currently. Now, they're reducing Mauga's chain gun damage from 5 to 4. The difference between Tracer and Mauga is the fact that Mauga has, I don't even know, 20 times more bullets than Tracer has. Mauga has a ton of bullets. So even though the general DPS is going to be lower, obviously, which means that the ultimate is going to come online a little bit later because you do less damage, you farm your ultimate a little bit slower. I think that in the long run, this might lower his DPS by, I don't know, 500 to 1,000. And Blizzard, I've actually spectated a game in which I would say, okay, it was a top 500 player. I feel like they weren't fully focusing. And I think that in 15 minutes, in 15 minutes, they did 36,000 damage. I think that this damage reduction will maybe lower it by, I don't know, I don't think it's going to matter that much. Especially because he has a lot of bullets. I don't think it's going to lower it by 20%. I really don't think it's going to lower it by 20%. Even though it's like a 20% nerf. The number of shots with the incendiary chain gun to ignite enemies increased from 10 to 15. This is interesting. I kind of like this, okay? Obviously I like this, but I love this a little bit more. Why? Because it encourages different hero synergies. I think that obviously it is still easy, in my opinion, to get your incendiary chain gun to activate. I think it's still easy to do that. But maybe you just made him being playable with Ashe. So you can like just go to TNT at the beginning of the fight, start with incendiary chain gun, do more damage, and then pop off. Interesting changes. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I see a lot of chatting chatters say that it's 20% damage nerf. On paper, you might be saying that, but here's the thing that I disagree with on you in that case. I would say that yes, theoretically speaking, it is probably a minimum of a 20% damage nerf to him. But the thing is that the fights are usually way over and he already did sufficient amount of damage before this nerf actually even impacts him. Do you know what I mean? So his survivability is still very strong. He still has a lot of bullets. And the damage, it's kind of like this. He can do 1,500 damage per fight, but he only has to do 800 damage to win the team fight, and then to clean it up afterwards, the fight has already been won and the damage has been inflicted. I might be wrong on this. We'll see though. He doesn't even have to reload. I personally would have liked for the reload to happen. I feel like he has, 350 bullets and no overheat mechanic or more bullets than that. right? So maybe increasing his reload time so that he can manage his bullets a little bit more would have been better. But still, 5 to 4 and 10 to 15, understandable changes. We'll see what's going to happen. Or maybe the ammo capacity, the magazine capacity. Now, the cage fight. Ultimate duration reduced from 10 to 8 seconds. Could change overall. I would add to this, my opinion, if you focus Mauga down, right, and he dies and his ultimate is still available, you should get it destroyed. It's not like with Brig, if you die, your passive, your Inspire passive is still procced and it still continues. I think that if you focus Mauga in his cage, the cage should drop, in my opinion. I think that the cage should drop. Good idea with the duration reduced from 10 to 8 seconds. Will this matter that much? I don't think I've ever seen a team fight that lasted more than 10 seconds when he uses cage fight. So I don't think that this is a big nerf overall. He has 8 seconds of literally infinite ammo. If he has his E up while doing so, he should be fine and still clear everybody. Still a step into the right direction. It's a small change to his ultimate, which I don't think is going to impact it that much. The damage change seems pretty huge on paper, but I think that in practice, it's still not going to be enough to make him, put him more like at the same POG level as the other tanks, in my opinion, with this. So the AMA just started right now. The Overwatch 2 Hero Design team will be answering some questions about MAUGA'S first week in the game, and we already have the first response in the AMA from Alec. Question from Dear Structure 200. Hello and thank you for organizing this AMA. I've appreciated the communication around Overwatch 2. It's been positive. I have a specific query, I think, about Wrecking Ball. During Flatz's stream with Alec, there was a mention of ongoing changes for him. The past 2 reworks have truly improved gameplay, and as a Wrecking Ball main, I'm eagerly anticipating potential alterations. Could you provide further details on the timeline for these changes, and perhaps delve into the specific plans for modifying his abilities? Pause, champ. We playtested the first round of Wrecking Ball changes last week and think it's off to a good start. Ayo! Wrecking Ball changes. Overall, we're looking at making it a bit easier to play alongside Wrecking Ball with various support heroes. Thank you for support heroes. Increase Ball's options in combat and implement some quality of life changes. In terms of timeline, it depends on how far we go with some of the changes and what's required here. It could end up as a bigger balance patch. It could end up with giving Wrecking Ball a new ability. Oh my god. 2 grappling hooks. Or 2 balls. Right now though, I think it'll lean closer to the first and not need the same sort of support that Roadhog and Sombra needed. So, hopefully get something out of there in the next few seasons. So Alec just confirmed that they're doing some Wrecking Ball changes. They're leaning more towards trying to play him with various support here. So they're working on support plus Wrecking Ball synergies. Because to be honest, Wrecking Ball doesn't synergize that well with any supports. Like for example, you're playing with Reinhardt, you think that you need Lucio to speed boost you in, right? Like it's easy to come up with team comp. So you play with Ana and you just Ana plus Winston and you just nano Winston in. But with Wrecking Ball, what are the best supports with Ball? In Overwatch 1, we had Zenyatta and we had Brig. That was like the team comp, Zen and Brig. But this doesn't work right now with only solo tank because you had Ball plus Diva or another DPS in that case before goal lock. So, Wrecking Ball with various support heroes, increase Ball's options in combat. I think this means options. Probably different approaches as to how to take the team fight rather than just slam, get out, shoot, shield, of course, and then go out. Probably different ways his abilities are going to interact and implement some quality of life changes. In terms of timeline, so when this would happen, they're still thinking about it. They haven't decided yet if they want to give them to give Wrecking Ball a rework, I would say, like they did to Roadhog and Sombra, like a new ability, change like a new ability, or if they just want to buff him altogether, like change some of his abilities. Hopefully get something out there in the next few seasons. So it is Alec just confirmed that in the next couple of seasons, we will definitely be seeing some changes to Wrecking Ball. It can be a new ability, possibly, if they decide to do that, or it can just be increased numbers, or like number adjustments to his kit already. Honestly, Wrecking Ball, I think, is the only tank in Overwatch 2 that hasn't been as strong as compared to the others. I think there wasn't a single meta with him since the beginning of Overwatch 2, so he does need some help, and it's good to see that Blizzard is looking, the Overwatch team, I mean, is looking at Wrecking Ball changes. The second answer from the AMA, Son of Gary, asked, what are some plans to curb back Mauga's ability to punish enemy tanks? It's one of the less interesting portions of his kit, but also one of the biggest things making him so strong right now. True, Mauga is very good against every other tank. Mauga is intended to be an aggressive, high damage output tank as he offers less in defense to his team compared to other tank options and doesn't have great mobility. We're lowering Mauga's weapon damage in general, which will help with some of this where it can feel extreme at times. He has good and bad matchups within the tank role, which is great for creating some depth, so it's not necessarily a role-wide problem, they're saying. Sigma and D.Va match up well, okay, and have an advantage against him. Roadhog, Junker Queen, Ramatra are fairly even matchups. Okay, and Zarya Reinhardt can do decently but require more support from their team, and Mauga is strongest against the dive tanks and Orisa. So, let's go step by step with what happened here, okay? So, first things first, they clarified that Mauga is intended to be aggressive, high damage. He should be doing a lot of damage because he doesn't have a lot of defensive tools for his team, right? He helps by just eliminating the enemies, taking space, and being unkillable most of the times. So, they say he doesn't have great mobility. I beg to differ on this one. His charge, which is unstoppable, is on a 6-second cooldown. It might not seem like great mobility like Kiriko's TP, but give it a couple of weeks, couple of months, and I do hope that they are going to be looking at maybe increasing the cooldown to his mobility. This is not his biggest issue though, right? Like, obviously it's his damage. He does a lot of damage. So, they said that we're lowering his weapon damage in general. We don't have the exact numbers. We don't know exactly what I want to do so far in the AMA. No details on patch notes or anything. But they're saying that they're going to reduce the weapon damage, which will help with some of this where you can feel extreme at times. Lower damage also means lower sustain during his overdrive, or how's his E ability called, in which he lifesteals, and also it means that he's going to get his ultimate a little bit slower than before because damage equals ultimate points. He has good and bad matchups within the tank role, which is great for creating some depth, so it's not necessarily a role-wide problem. So what the Overwatch team, design team is saying, the hero design team is saying, is that they feel like he's going to be clearly better against some heroes, weaker against other heroes, and have even matchups with some heroes. This is what they're saying with this. Sigma and D.Va, they say that they match up pretty well and have an advantage against him. Sigma, I can possibly understand because you can keep your distance, kind of. You have the shield, you have the kinetic grasp. Okay, I can maybe understand Sigma. I'm super curious to see how good Sigma is going to be against him. He's the tank that I've speculated in my tier list that I posted on my secondary channel on ML7 Plays that he might do really well against him, especially if you're super good at Sigma. I don't know about D.Va though. Like, why does D.Va do good against him? From what I know, D.Va can fly out of his ultimate. Yes, you can deny the bullets, but those bullets are not what you want to pick D.Va for. You'd want to pick D.Va for her defense matrix to block important abilities. Maybe just when he's using his overdrive, or how you call his ability, overdrive, his E, maybe that's when you want to DM? Maybe you want to DM inside the ultimate inside the ultimate? I don't know about the D.Va matchup. Roadhog, Junker Queen, and Ramatra are fairly even matchups. Now, I think that Roadhog probably has the upper hand against him up close. I think Roadhog is probably one of the few heroes in the game that can actually kill him up close. Junker Queen and Ramatra is going to be interesting to see how good they actually do against him when teams are going to be like evenly skilled, because quick play sometimes has some funny matchmaking. And Zarya and Reinhardt can do decently, but require more support from their team. I know that a lot of players have been speculating that Zarya can work against him, and the reason why is because it's playing against the Mauga is going to be roughly the same as playing against the Orisa, which means easy charge. If you time well, if you do well timed bubbles, you will be full energy a lot. Now, can you melt him? Can you do something with that? Can he keep the range? It's going to be interesting to see how it's going to be playing out. And Reinhardt against him, well, I don't think that Reinhardt can do that well against him, but who knows? Reinhardt doesn't have an unstoppable charge. We'll see. Now, Mauga is strongest against the dive tanks, and Orisa is what they're saying. I think that Mauga versus Orisa, good, but at the same time, isn't Orisa like the only tank that can actually escape his ultimate? You can survive with Fortify, same thing with her spin. You can eat the incoming damage. I don't know about these matchups, but to summarize, they say that he should be doing damage. They're nerfing his damage. He doesn't have great mobility. I disagree with this. I think that he has great mobility. And they feel that he is definitely going to be stronger in some matchups, weaker in other matchups, more of a skill-based matchup, I would say, sometimes with some heroes over here. Gob384 is saying, with Mauga's release, there were a few other balance changes like Queen's tighter spread and Ramatra's armor. Were these changes made with Mauga's tank busting in mind? For example, leaving Roadhog and Reinhardt unchanged to see matchup data, or independently planned changes prior to his release? So did they tune Queen and Ramatra's numbers to play well against Mauga or not? We wanted to lift up some other tanks that we knew would have a particularly hard time with Mauga, but the changes themselves weren't necessarily tied to their direct matchup with Mauga. The change to Doomfist's ultimate, for example, was something we believed would help players engage with it more regularly. The change to Winston's primary fire helps him in a number of matchups. So far, yes and no. For Roadhog, we saw internally that he had quite a hard time with Mauga. So even though he had been performing quite well across our rank thresholds, we decided to hold off any changes. How Roadhog slots into the meta will be made more clear with the upcoming Mauga changes and Mauga's inclusion into competitive. Okay, so they say that on paper, they probably felt like some tanks were going to have a hard time against them in a 1 versus 1 scenario. Obviously, he's going to be in front of you, just you're going to get gold. But this doesn't mean that some changes were made as an idea, as a way to like counter Mauga being added to the game. They give example with Doomfist's ultimate change or Winston's primary fire. But a lot of people have been asking about Roadhog being nerfed, right? Because after the Roadhog rework, he seems to be kind of unkillable. Players are starting to understand how to play him a little bit more because we spend more time playing him. And more team comes to help engage with him to actually make him viable in games. So like, for example, Walk the Hog, play Ana plus Roadhog, and add a Kiriko there, and Roadhog is just going to take control over the entire map in that case. So they didn't nerf Roadhog because internally they had quite a hard time with Mauga. So even though he had been performing quite well across our rank thresholds, we decided to hold off any changes. Now, I personally find this pretty hard to believe. I mean, of course I trust that they probably internally said that if they said that we're having hard times with Roadhog versus Mauga, I understand that. They clearly were probably having hard times. But hard for me to believe the fact that Roadhog is struggling against him. I think that Roadhog is one of the very few tanks that actually excels against him, right? Like, of course, you can get up close and personal. You can block a lot of damage. You don't have anything important to use your E for. You can control corners. I think Roadhog should be fine versus him, right? More than fine. I might be wrong on this, but just my opinion. How the Roadhog slots into the meta will be made more clear with the upcoming Mauga changes and Mauga's inclusion into competitive. So what they're saying is that before they want to do some changes to Roadhog, they're waiting to see how viable Mauga is in ranked, and then maybe keep a close eye on the Hog and maybe nerf him accordingly. I really enjoy Mauga's dual guns gameplay. Setting people on fire with one gun and getting to crit with the other is very fun. Unfortunately, it feels like the best way to play Mauga is to shoot both guns at the same time, making his interesting gameplay mechanic an afterthought. Are there any plans to incentivize Mauga's alternating gun gameplay? Well, to be honest, medium to like short range, you're just gonna left click and right click. I kind of understand where this is coming from. We'll have to see how this develops over time, as there's always a learning curve for new heroes. Oh, wait a minute. Shooting both guns is not always more effective due to the large spread and more random nature of it, not to mention the fact that shooting both guns slows you way more than shooting one gun. Learning when to use each firing mode to your advantage is part of the fun. Generally, if enemies are further than 15 meters or so, you'll want to use the alternating primary/secondary fire. Okay, so what they're saying right now is that give players a little bit more time to understand how his mechanics are working. But this doesn't, it is pretty easy to understand, I guess, the fact, and I don't think that this was necessarily the question. The question was, it's more like it feels that the majority of his gameplay, 80 to 90% of his gameplay, I would say, I'm adding this number up, but when I played Mauga, I felt that 80 to 90% of the time, I was shooting both guns. I think this was the question. The question was not necessarily like optimizing his gameplay at like you left click long range and then up close and personal you shoot with both guns at the same time. But realistically speaking, when this happening is going to be very rare, because if you stay in the open and you shoot from long distance, you want to close the distance, you want to close the distance, and that's when it's more efficient to shoot with both guns. So I think that this is like a small guide. The answer is more of like a small guide of how they envision Mauga should be played. But I think that in practice, it's kind of like buffing Cassidy's Fender Hammer so that from medium to long range, you should always left click, but up close and personal, Fender Hammer does a lot, right? Because I personally feel like Mauga's primary and secondary fire feels like Fender Hammer usage. When you can't miss, even if the spread is big. And maybe a reason why it feels like this is because he's super good against tanks, and tanks are big targets. You want to get up close and personal. So you definitely will feel like you do not have dual gun fun gameplay most of the times, because you're just going to be optimizing your gameplay in that case, being up close and personal to a big target in front of you, and just left clicking and right clicking with your guns, right? But medium to long range, you should left click and up close do this. Now 15 meters though, further than 15 meters, I don't know. We'll see how it is. So yeah, continue. We consider retouching some of the visuals of effects in the game. There was recently a post showing an Orisa who was burned, nanoed, and at least one other thing, and it was extremely hard to tell the difference at times. In addition to this, MAUGA'S bullets tend to splash on the victim's screen, and in addition to the burning, makes it very difficult to see at times. Alex is saying, as we inevitably add more heroes to the game with their own set of abilities and visual kits, we'll continue to look at past visual effects and new visual effects to make sure they all play nicely together. We always strive for clarity, but the Orisa post was a great example of how it can be difficult to read some of those stacking effects. Team is currently talking about solutions for that, and here's that feedback on the readability for some of MAUGA'S abilities. So they just said that we might be getting new visual effects to better understand, better see MAUGA'S abilities, because they seem to be like stacking effect-wise with other existing visual effects in the game, such as burning from ashes TNT, nano boost maybe, and other stuff like that. Can you tell us some of the scrapped or early abilities you had for Mauga? Just like how you showed us the Ilaria abilities that were scrapped, I would love to see what ideas you had early on for Mauga. Oh god, I'm scared. Let's see. Game design goes through a lot of iteration to find the most engaging combination of mechanics within the scope of our goals. We naturally try a lot of prototype variations, even with a strong starting idea. We tried a few alternate mobility abilities for Overrun. One of the first ideas was a short-range dash that would toss enemies into the air behind them if you impacted them. So kind of like a guy in pen, I don't know, like a small dash in front, then it throw them over you, I guess, if you hit them. It was fun to use, but the transition from third person to first person and trying to turn around to shoot them wasn't easy, and solutions like automatically doing a 180 with a camera took away control from players. Okay. The weapon had a couple alternates, such as a flamethrower or incendiary grenade launchers. There were a few attempts at having two very different firing weapons in each hand, so one being hit scan like it is now, and the other one being a travel time projectile. It didn't play as well when trying to fire both at the same time, unfortunately, especially in versions where they have different firing rates and how you want to aim travel time projectiles by leading a target, and tracking the ammo pool separately is difficult. The cage fight ultimate was pretty successful from the start, but we still tried other versions to see what would play best. It was a physical wall instead of a barrier at one point. Oh no, Fortnite and Overwatch. There was also a completely different ult that was more of an area of effect debuff to enemy damage dealt, the opposite of damage boost. Ooh. So kind of like the Mauga Enfeebling Orb from a while ago. So step by step, they say that a lot of stuff happened. But initially, his overgun, one of the first ideas, was to do a small dash and then boop them over you. So kind of like Bob, maybe? Roughly to how Bob does it. Now, okay, I understand from Mauga's side that this would be pretty annoying to like turn 180, take away camera control, impact them, whatever. But imagine being the player that gets overrun. Oh my god, that would feel so bad. That would feel so bad. I'm so happy that I didn't do this. The weapons, they said that they might have added a flamethrower or incendiary grenade launcher on his secondary gun. But because of different types of ammo, the fact that one was hit scan, one was projectile, it was pretty complicated. Honestly, I think it's a better choice, but I do still hope that maybe in the future, we're going to be getting a hero that has a flamethrower. The cage fight ultimate was pretty successful at the beginning. It was a physical wall instead of a barrier at one point. There was also a completely different ult that was more of an area of effect debuff to an enemy damage dealt, the opposite of damage boost. Now, good thing that I went with this barrier instead of physical wall. Not a fan of Maywall, to be honest, and the fact that you can like see through the barrier and enter it and exit it and stuff, good. I like the properties of a barrier in the game more than a physical wall. But they said that they were also testing a completely different ultimate that had an area of effect debuff to enemy damage dealt, the opposite of damage boost. I don't know if I would have liked this ultimate a little bit more than the one that he has. I think cage fight as it is right now suits his kit very well, but this would be something that would be incredible in the game. But hear me out. What if a support in the future would have this? I think that this is more of a support ultimate. Like, getting in, putting them in place, and then shooting them and stuff. Okay, that's a tank ult. But debuffing the enemies for damage dealt, it's clearly more of a support ult. Maybe we're going to be getting a support in the future that has a flamethrower, and that also does debuff to enemy damage dealt. Maybe. What are the team's thoughts on Mauga's cardiac overdrive? Currently. It often feels like he is too tanky when the ability is active, but too fragile when it's inactive/countered, along with the visual effects being hard to discern at times. We're reducing his damage, and those changes went live in this morning's hotfix patch. This change will inadvertently, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, but still, affect how much lifesteal he receives during cardiac overdrive, making him a little less tanky. True. Direct consequence, lower damage, lower life still doing this ability, increased ultimate, not cost, increased time for you in order to get your ultimate. The changes that they did are a good start. I still don't think they're enough, although, again, on paper they seem pretty big. But we'll have to wait and see how it's going to be played and how he's going to feel. Mauga's ult is pretty interesting in that almost nothing can escape from it. As far as I know, the only ways out are Symmetra TP and Life Weaver Pull. Also EMP if you count that as escaping. Or you can just die and go back to spawn. How does the team determine which abilities can counter which ults? Spin a wheel. Is it more about consistency between ults, the power levels of each ability, the heroes that are likely to be played in matchups, technical limitations of the game, or is it a little less premeditated and a little bit more played by ear? This is unusually this is unusually. This is usually trying to be consistent with game mechanics. We do make exceptions when necessary for the sake of game balance, but the less often we need to do that, the easier it is for players to learn and understand these many interactions across multiple heroes. MAUGA'S ultimate tethers are applying what we internally call mobility lock, which disables movement skills. Other things that use mobility lock are Junkrat's Steel Trap, Cassidy Magnetic Grenade Hinder Effect, Zarya and Sigma ultimates. For gameplay consistency, you should be able to use Symmetra Teleporter and Lifeweaver's Life Grip against those abilities. So they consider the ultimate as a mobility lock, has roughly the same mechanics as these abilities. We see that two other tanks have similar ultimates in which you just locked out of it. But the way to counter them, they talk about Lifeweaver's Life Grip and Symmetra's Teleporter. Maybe, with this answer, they're encouraging to actually play Lifeweaver against Mauga because you're a big counter to his ultimate. The platform doesn't help you. Although, I do understand this for gameplay consistency, but I'm gonna counter just one of them with an argument. Lifeweaver can also counter Zarya's Graviton Surge with pedal platform in that case. They work a little bit differently. It's not like a clear way of how they work and stuff, right? So it is mobility lock, but Lifeweaver can help you escape with his pedal platform from Mauga's cage fight, but you can escape Graviton with that. Not to mention against Sigma, you can block his ultimate with the petal. If you put it in the center, it's a cool trick, or with his 3 of life. It's not like 100% consistent across the board, but it does feel similar. Now, the thing is this good or is this bad is the question. The fact that abilities that are similar don't have like the same effects of knowing how you can escape them or not, you know? Game mechanic wise. Symmetra Teleporter and Lifeweaver's Life Grip against those abilities. You can TP out of Graviton with Symmetra, you can do that. You cannot TP out of Sigma ultimate if you're lifted up in that. You can get pulled out of Sigma ult. You can get, like Sims TP doesn't counter Sigma's ultimate in this case. Interesting though. Yes, it does feel like a mobility lock ability. I don't know if this will be seen, but I know that it was mentioned that there are a certain number of heroes that the team is looking at for reworks or kit tune-ups. You mentioned Wrecking Ball as being the top of that list. Is Reaper being looked at for a rework at all? I love his current kit, but he does seem prime for a rework since he has an available ability slot. That would not be a rework, that would be a huge buff, giving him another ability. And then on an unrelated note, any plans for a talent-heavy team MAUGA'S scan? I would love to have that one. True. Thanks for taking the time to do the AMA. Reaper is also on that list. What? Had our first brainstorm and have aligned on our overall goals for what we want to see with Reaper's abilities. One of those goals is modernizing Reaper's kit, Shadow Step, and Raid Form standing out there. We may also explore some new abilities for Reaper on the right click, but don't want to take the space just because it's available. If we add something there, we'll want it to give to him slightly more decision making in combat that he has currently. Okay, so step by step, let's go through this answer. So they did confirm that Ball, they're looking at like changing some stuff for Ball, and now they're saying that they want to do the same thing for Reaper. Right? So they already had their first brainstorm, so this is just at the beginning of this. It's not like it's going to drop in a month or two, I think. It's at least a couple of months away. And they want to modernize Reaper's kit. Now, what this means, I have no idea. But they're mentioning Shadow Step, so his shift ability, the one in which he goes like, from the shadows, yeah. And Raid Form, which is his... Actually, no, that's his TP ability. That's why I did it bad. And Raid Form, which is his shift ability. Right, so his TP and shift. So no changes to the ultimate. They have apparently the first brainstorming session agreed upon, and not necessarily like a lot of changes to his gun gameplay. But his TP and how it works and what it does, or like his raid form, are apparently being looked at and try to modernize them. What does this mean? He literally transforms into a shadow. You can't see where he's gonna go from. honestly, this is what I think this means. Maybe you don't know. You can see that he's a shadow. That's what I speculated might happen, right? Also, we may also explore new abilities for Reaper on the right click, but don't want to take the space just because it's available. If we had something here, we want to give to him slightly more decision making and combat than he has currently. You know what this means? This means that he's not they're looking probably at giving him the possibility of being played medium range. I am speculating here. Why? Reaper excels with shotguns close range. Now, if you right click with him, which is again, this is speculation, slightly more decision making in combat than he has currently. What is the decision making? Changing probably the bullet spread or what the bullets do. So maybe if you want to left click for more damage, maybe right click with the bullets might be a bigger spread, but I don't know, they add some cool effect to the bullets, or maybe they increase the range so that he can actually poke and be playable, you know? I think that he might be getting... Oh my god, no. Imagine if they give him the same type of gun, the same type of gun mechanics like Roadhog had in Overwatch 1. Like pre-rework Roadhog. Imagine that. Imagine that, dude. So to summarize, Reaper changes will happen in the future. At least theoretically speaking, they had just had it for his brainstorm. Looking at modernizing Shadow Step in raid form, so probably how the rest of these abilities interact with similar abilities or new visual effects or stuff, and also seeing if they are going with changing his right click or not so that he has more decision making with how he should be using his guns, which I assume is going to be probably something medium to long range so that he don't actually have to play him only in short range team comps, or adding different effects to the bullets on your right click, right? Adding different effects. Can be, I don't know, increased damage, lower damage, slow, whatever. It can be like a lot of stuff like that. This is, again, pure speculation on this. Pure speculation on this. But I do have to say the following thing, though. I think that Reaper is fine. I think that Reaper is fine. I think that probably resources would be better allocated in other heroes or in other areas rather than just changing Reaper. I think Reaper is one of the very few Overwatch heroes. I think Reaper overall is fine. Just my 2 cents. Okay. Thoughts on potentially swapping his miniguns from ammo to a hit system like Orisa? Pause, champ. I would love this. Right now, there's not a strong desire to potentially make such a swap. Hit systems give significantly more damage uptime compared to traditional ammo systems. Okay. They're functionally just a constant reload you can cancel at any time unless you hit 0 ammo. The reload time gives players a window of opportunity to avoid his fire. So they just said, Tess just said, that they are not looking at giving him an overheat mechanic similar with Orisa. You know with Orisa that when you shoot, the meter goes up, and then if you hit the max, then you go on a longer cooldown until you can use your gun again? No. They're a fan of Mauga being able to reload. So, and having like a magazine size for his bullets. Now, I would say that this is... I kind of... Okay, so let me get my thoughts in order with this. Orisa more damage uptime than Mauga. It's not necessarily the amount of bullets that you can shoot. It's the damage that the bullets do, the damage, taking into consideration damage fall off, rate of fire. It's about the cadence of the bullets. It's about the properties of the bullets. Of course, in theory, if you have like a meter that goes like this, and then you stop it and go down, and then you go up and then stop it and go down and stop it and go down, it's different than like if you want to reload. With this being said, though, I do want to stress on the fact that I feel like he should get in the future, maybe next week, maybe, if the changes that they did to him are not that big, a longer reload time. Honestly, a longer reload time. Can we get more details on the hero ban systems Can we get more details on the hero ban system you're looking at? Would it be a single ban per team, or would you get one for each role? Would there also be protects? I've always loved the idea, and I think it's great you're giving it a chance. I'm a fan of hero bans, by the way. Want to clarify here that the first time we do this, it will be for a limited time as an experiment. With that said, we're still discussing how exactly it will work in the match flow and where we put this experiment. Should everyone get a ban against one hero in their role, or that would be too much? Should this experiment actually run in competitive for a weekend, or should it get its own queue? How long is this phase before you select heroes? How much time does the team need to feel like they're strategizing, but not so long it significantly increases the match length? A lot of questions. Those are some sort of questions we talk about in our design meetings around this. I think any sort of ban system in Overwatch has the chance to be fairly polarizing, especially when your main gets banned. The point of the experiment will be to gather some initial feedback and make sure that if we ever move forward with permanently adding bans, we've covered all our bases. So what I'm getting out of this is that they're exploring the idea, and we will have an implementation in the future as a limited time experiment. There is no way they're adding this for a full competitive season or fully for quick play. I do expect this to be, my opinion, just a separate queue with hero bans to test it out, which would be cool to do, but hear me out on it. I think it should be running only for a couple of days, because it might be what we might be seeing would be the same thing that it did like a couple of months ago when there was like a team queue or something like that. I don't remember exactly, when people played for like 1 or 2 days and that's stopped playing altogether. This being said though, I do think that maybe running this, hero bans are going to be more used at higher ratings in Masters, in GM, and so on. And I think that if they want to do this for a weekend, that might be another chance for them to actually get some really good feedback as to what needs to be changed, what doesn't have to be changed and stuff. I love this to be added to the game. They are not 100% sure that they want this, but they're talking about it, and they want to do at least an experiment with it and see how it's gonna go. But my opinion, in higher ranks, in Masters, in GM, in top 500, I think that a lot of people are gonna try this mode out and see how this whole ban system, and see if it's gonna be a good idea or not. Another question. There's a lot of discussion right now around the way that Mauga was buffed coming to the live game, specifically how he became more aggressive against his good matchups and still gets shut down with relative ease by certain heroes in the cast. I personally find this balanced philosophy dangerous, as it sidelines possible adaptation against bad matchups in favor of enabling the hard counter swap mindset. I don't think there should be no counters. Having varying matchups is what makes a balanced game fun, but it feels a little extreme right now. I'm really unsure what changes could alleviate this issue. What tools does the balance team use to evaluate matchups between heroes, and which knobs do you twist to change the way a game feels from each hero's perspective? An important aspect of our hero design philosophy is that heroes should have clear strengths and weaknesses to create more varied and interesting gameplay. When we look to buff a hero, for example, we want to keep this in mind and typically try to focus on a hero's intended strengths rather than clearing away their weaknesses. We do want to avoid counters being too easy and effective without adequate counterplay options. There is no broad goal of making sure every hero choice is viable in some... There is a broad goal of making sure every hero choice is viable in some capacity and feels good to play, while hopefully not feeling too unfair to play against. Some direct matchups are not reasonably close, like Winston versus Roadhog, but we don't strictly balance off of 1v1 matchups, as Overwatch is a team game. Winston has a good chance to win by going after everyone that is not a Roadhog, for example. True. Generally, we found that when the heroes are balanced closely enough, individual player performance and teamwork has significantly more impact on the outcome of a match than hero choice does, until you reach the highest levels of competition. So, important aspect, clear strengths and weaknesses. They want to focus first on hero strengths rather than on hero weaknesses. They want to avoid counters being too easy and effective, but they do not look exclusively at 1v1 matchups like one hero countering another hero, because they think that with the right swaps to the right team comp, you can get away with playing some heroes, even though in your direct matchup, you're not going to do that well. So they're saying we don't strictly balance off 1v1 matchups, as Overwatch is a team game. So yes, you're going to have a rough time playing Winston versus Roadhog, but you can build the comp around the fact that they're playing Roadhog, because that tank might not be able to actually peel for a very greedy backline in that case, and you might get some pretty good nano engages, for example, to go in. Rather than, guys, let's just focus the tank and hopefully we can win the game. Generally, we found that when heroes are balanced closely enough, individual player performance and teamwork has significantly more impact on the outcome of a match than hero choice does, until you reach the highest levels of competition. So this is about like the hero design philosophy. What hero has the most amount of final blows on Mauga? 2 Maugas enter a cage fight, 1 leaves, both leave. There's a lot of Mauga right now, more than any other hero. He's responsible for many deaths, even his own. So what I'm getting out of this is that Mauga counters Mauga. That's what I'm getting out of this. Mauga probably has the most final blows on Mauga. So in order to counter Mauga, you got to go Mauga. If you want to win against Mauga, you have to pick your own Mauga. Mauga counters Mauga. It's everyone. Mauga seems very Mauga seems very feast or famine at a moment. When he works really well. But when he doesn't work, he's basically useless. He also demands a lot of attention from his support line, to the point that it feels like you have to healbot him, or else he'll evaporate the instant you look away. Has the team noticed similar patterns in their data? The way Mauga was designed invites players to get up into the thick of the fight all together with his team. Overrun encourages players to land directly on top of their opponents, and his dual fire mode is more effective at close ranges. Cardiac Overdrive and Cage Fight invite his teammates to stay close to him to take advantage of their defensive benefits. This can cause Mauga's to go into a lot of situations that are more precarious and will result in him struggling if his team isn't on the same page. Mauga's abilities are versatile and have uses in situations where they don't get full value. Overrun, for example, lets players run away from a fight with damage resistance, so they can poke from farther away with alternating his single fire chain guns. As time goes on and players explore Mauga's get more nuanced uses of his abilities should hopefully make playing him less polarizing. His abilities also have a lot of tuning points in regards to both how he helps himself and how he helps his teammates. So there's plenty of room to change his numbers as he develops in the future. So what I'm saying is that in theory, what I'm getting out of this, in theory, it is encouraged for you to stay close to him and to give him not all of your attention, but 99.9% of your attention to just healbot him, right? He excels at close range combat. Cardiac Overdrive makes you want to play in his AoE, in his aura. Cage Fight also makes you to want to follow up. So if you're playing like with Rework, with Mei, with heroes that can want to play like pretty close together to each other, right? Then he's going to excel in those team comps, because this is how his skit in theory works on paper. What they're saying though, in addition to this, is that you can maybe use his abilities, the more time will pass and the more we're going to learn how to play him, that he can use these abilities also in other scenarios, not exactly as the intuitive usage of them is at the moment by just staying in front of the enemies. So they just give an example. Overrun gives you damage resistance, so you can use Overrun to poke safer. I do understand the usage of Overrun, but more of an anti-dive tool, not necessarily to use your Overrun to kite back to disengage with this. I don't think that this would be like the optimal part, but I do agree with the fact that you do have different levels of possibilities, better said, of using his abilities more creatively rather than just staying together and just everybody just shoot and pocket Mauga. Will this be better than just staying together and shooting with him and enabling him? I don't think so. But you do have the possibility. Ana has been a hot topic recently, with this being only amplified by Mauga. Ana is currently needed to keep some of the current tanks in check. How are you planning to curb Ana's complaint and incredibly high pick rate while making sure some of the tanks currently being held back by anti don't profit too much from Ana nerfs? Or are currently no Ana changes on the horizon? Or are you planning to nerf some tanks in the same patch as the patch with the Ana changes? Let's see. Anti-heal is a useful mechanic for the overall health of the game, as it helps to ensure that healing never gets too far out of control. The complaints around it feeling oppressive are understandable, as debuffs are never something players enjoy while being affected by, and will be looking for ways to soften its impact while keeping Ana a viable hero. The simplest solution here is just decreasing the duration of the effect, though there is certainly a point where it swings from feeling OP to not useful enough if the time is too low to really capitalize on. The reaction around it does also suggest that healing is probably too impactful overall, so we'll be looking to address that in the near future as well, whether that is handled in the case of individual hero like Roadhog, Take a Breather, or more systemically. Okay, so let's go step by step. Love the answer. Anti-heal is a useful mechanic for the overall health of the game, as it helps to ensure healing never gets too far out of control. Indeed, with every hero, almost every hero in the game, adding like a little bit of sustain, just power creeping their weight sustain-wise with HP, you need anti-healing in this. And also, it's part of like Ana's identity overall, like as a hero. Her strength is kind of like removing Reinhardt's shield. What if, how would Reinhardt be played without the shield? How would Ana's Nade, how would Ana be played? It would feel like as a hero without an anti-heal in this case. The complaints around it feeling oppressive are understandable because it's a debuff. Honestly, I don't like being shattered. You know what I mean? I don't like being shattered. I don't like being punched to the wall. I don't like being frozen by Mei. It's probably, I can feel like that, but at least you have control over the character. So, debuffs are never something players enjoy being affected by. Agreed. And we'll be looking for ways to soften its impact while keeping Ana a viable hero. So, they just confirmed that they're looking at nerfing Ana Nade. The simplest solution here, what they're thinking about, is just decreasing the duration of the effect, though there is certainly a point where it swings from feeling OP to not useful enough if the time is too low to really capitalize on. So let's say, for example, right now, how long does the Nade last exactly? Let me just move this to the side. Ana, Wiki, Overwatch. How long does the Nade effect last? The Nade lasts for 3.5 seconds, okay? So the window of opportunity of Yukon and healing is 3.5 seconds. Maybe they're looking at making it 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds. Maybe they're looking at stuff like this. Now, hear me out. I think that even if they make it 0.25 seconds, okay, I think that a lot of players are still going to be like, I got anti-healed and this is why I'm going to lose the game. I think that this is on a 12-second cooldown. You can still play around it. You have plenty ways of denying it, but I do understand the fact that it just feels understandably oppressive because it's a debuff. Not to mention the fact that I'm going a bit of a tangent over here, but if the enemy Ana uses Nade, your DPSs in that case can just go for the Ana very easily and try to secure a kill. If you're a tank and you're getting antied non-stop, that opens up opportunities for DPSs and support to actually go for the Ana because it's on a pretty big cooldown and secure some kills. So you're tanking, I guess. But they feel like maybe it's going to be hard to balance if you do it like this. If you change the duration from 3.5 seconds to a little bit lower. 3 seconds, 2.5, 2 seconds. I think that if it drops under 3 seconds, it is not going to feel that good. If it drops under 3 seconds, because the window of opportunity is going to close. Obviously, it's going to close a little bit. I think that it's usually when it happens with the Nade, you throw the Nade and then you wait for people to follow up. And for them to close the distance and capitalize up until then, it might take a lot of time. You need like some time to do that. Not useful if the time is too low to really capitalize on. It's going to be very hard to find like the sweet spot here. The reaction around it also suggests that healing, this is something that I absolutely want to talk about. I'm not going to go extensively into it, but I want to stress this a lot. The reaction around it does also suggest that healing is probably too impactful overall. So we'll be looking to address that in the near future as well. In the near future, they're going to be looking at addressing healing. Whether that is handled in the case of individual heroes like Roadhog, Take a Breather, or more systemically. So they mentioned whether they're talking about individual self-healing, self-sustain in this, what I'm getting out of it, from other heroes that are not in the support role, which is exactly what we've been saying for a lot of years for that matter, which is a lot of heroes have ways of self-sustaining themselves, right? Self-sustaining themselves, and it just adds. Roadhog has take a breather, Sigma regenerates shields in that case. Like, you have like a lot of tiny things, and then you add also supports that primarily will sustain the team, right? Because you can't play like Roadhog. You can play Roadhog and self-heal yourself in that case, but you cannot play Reinhardt without a support just pumping a lot of heals into you. So, or more systemically, I'm a little bit worried about what this means. Does this mean that they want to cut healing overall in the game? Does this mean that they want to cut healing to other heroes that are not supports? Does this mean that they're looking at maybe adding more healing to the game? I'm joking with this. But still, we have some clear confirmations on the fact that Nade will be nerfed, either it being with the simplest solution from them, philosophy-wise, just decreasing the duration of the Nade effect and playing around it, or and I mean, actually, in the second part of this, healing might be a little bit too impactful, so you're just going to nerf sustain from other areas and take a look at how much healing there is actually in the game, because they just said that anti-heal is a useful mechanic for the overall health of the game. If you're gonna remove it, then I guarantee you that we're gonna have metas in which literally nobody will die and the fights will be taking for 1 hour. It's just gonna become full resident sleeper. It might be also a result of other heroes being able to sustain themselves and just doing other hero strengths maybe even better than them, but it definitely is something that needs to be looked at. So, curious to see what they're gonna do to Nade. Very curious to see.